live from the Hellmouth Adjacent. It's a popular cinema podcast. I'm your co-host Payne,
And I'm Bill.
and welcome to episode 87, also known as.
Avengers Assemble. That's our title. What do you think?
I think, Bill, if you could be any Avenger, which Avenger would you be?
Oh, Cap easily.
Oh, Cap is badass. I
Cap's
guess
the man, man.
if I could be any Avenger myself, I
And
guess
you can't choose Thanos.
I can't choose.
You can't choose Thanos. He's not an Avenger.
Well, you know what? I'm changing the rules. If you could be any character in the movie, which one would you be? I'd be Thanos.
Wow.
Then I
Wow.
would follow that up with Captain America, and then follow that up with Thor, and not the fat Thor. I'm talking the
Really?
Thor.
Really?
Oh, maybe I should dedicate the show to Thanos. He was such a good villain.
Yeah, was. Now he's dust. Oops.
So-
Spoiler alert, everybody. Guess we got off on the wrong foot. Spoilers.
So, Bill, are we going to, when we give our review of the Avengers, are we going to do a spoiler-free or spoiler-riddled?
We're doing spoiler riddled, but we should probably put a spoiler tag at the top of the show. So to
I'm
let
not
people
doing
know.
that. I saw an article that came out that said more than 30 million Americans and more than 100 million global guests experience Endgame on the big screen this weekend. The numbers are considered staggering.
Yes, I read.
Because my phone alerted me that the movie pulled in $1.2 billion
In 3 days.
opening weekend. Opening weekend,
Globally.
1.2 billion.
That's globally. Now, domestically is significantly less, but still enough to make it the highest opening weekend of all time.
Yes, it's shattered all sorts of records. Thursday, weekend, globally.
So I heard the latest numbers are 358 for the 3-day domestic.
What was the Force Awakens?
It was something like
250 or something?
something like that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it lapped the field on that one. I mean, in all honesty, it's a culmination of a lot of work put in. It's not like it's a third movie like Return of the King or something. This movie has logged a lot of hours and a lot of time and investment by people.
Yeah, it's the 22nd movie.
Yeah. But it's
storyline.
the culmination of all that work. You got to see how it all wraps up, no matter what. So, and the people responded.
Unprecedented level of serialization for these stories. It's never been done before. 22 movies in the same storyline. So unprecedented reaction seems appropriate.
Yeah, yeah. Which is good. Which is good. So when my woman looks at me like, "What are you doing?" I'm going down to Bill's place because we got to see the movie on Thursday, and they kind of look at like, "What movie is this?" I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So now you can see that there's a global response. So it's just not like it's some sort of just regular movie. It's an event.
So it somehow legitimizes it in the eyes of the normal people in the
Oh
population.
no, I don't think it legitimizes it, but at least it sort of like gives you like, oh, this just wasn't some sort of just random, I'm headed down to see Men in Black 3 or whatever else.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband came to me and was like, "Did you see how much money Avengers made?" I was like, "Yeah." Now
Right.
he wasn't interested in seeing the movie, but it does sort of like,
Yes.
not that it wasn't legitimized in his eyes before, but it gives them like, oh, I guess there was a big thing this weekend, huh?
Right. Well, yeah, it almost kind of like when you're at the water cooler when the people show up on Monday and they're like, "Hey, wow, 1.2 billion. Did you go see the movie?" You're like, no. I mean, but I'm planning on it. Maybe. Yeah, sure. I'm in the know.
Right.
So obviously we're going to be discussing Avengers. I'm not going to put a spoiler tag on it because, as you said this weekend off air, if the people haven't seen the movie this weekend, then fuck them. So
Okay.
that's what you said.
I said it off air, not on the damn show. But okay.
And that's why we have the explicit rating yet again. Okay. Well, Bill, before we get there, I mean, technically, the only thing that's been happening really since our last show is Game of Thrones and Avengers Endgame. Now I've got some news articles, but it seems like these 2 weeks have been dominated, and it looks like probably for the next few weeks it'll be dominated by these two subjects right here. Um, you've got an unprecedented thing happening on a TV show. I'm using hyperbole there, and you have something going on in the theaters equally. It's amazing right now.
Yeah,
Um, so how are you? Everything good with you?
everything's fine. Just
For the fans out there, I went down to Casa de la Bill, and as usual, the accommodations were stellar. Everything was very
well, thank you.
clean, and
We
the
try.
husband cooked ribs as a snack for us, which was always very cool. And you had wings, and we had steak. You on the grill, grilled
It was
romaine.
just a fat, meated fat weekend.
Yes. I'm still upset that I had to pay $8 for popcorn. I feel very I feel a certain way about paying $8 for
You
popcorn.
didn't pay $8 for that small popcorn. It was
I
more like
did. It was eight
that.
dollars.
That's wow. That's I didn't
There was
realize
only
it.
two sizes. The sizes were $7.75, and the other size was 8.50 with
So,
tax.
so you
And plus
paid $8. So for 50 cents more, basically, you could have had a large popcorn.
I think it was a dollar gap. Maybe it was 8.75. Either I think it was 8.75, 7.75, and 8.75.
How do you think they pay for these exorbitant fees that Disney's charging them for these movies that they're dropping $350 million on every week?
Well, you know what? They need to release the fee schedule, Bill, because maybe if I saw
It's
exactly
up
what
on the
they.
board. It's up on those giant boards above the fucking cashier station. You know, those like 56-inch screen TVs are up there.
Maybe
I
they should
mean,
do like. Maybe they should do like everything else. How about they just get kiosks, get rid of the individual workers, put up robots. We come in and scan it, and then we just kind of like,
how is
you
that going to
know,
make it better for you?
I don't know, but it's hard for me to justify spending when I pay $8 for the small popcorn. I'm thinking I could have bought like 5 packs of Orville Reichenbacher, and you wouldn't let me pop some at your house and bring it in
No,
with a
because
Ziploc bag.
we're not ghetto. That's why I said no. Because $8 for a popcorn is what you just, it's part of the perks of going to the movies. We only go to the movies like 8 times or 10 times a year max. Not even. It's more like eight. So you spend $80 a year on popcorn divided by half because you don't get popcorn every time we go. $40 a year? Really?
I feel like I'm being gouged. I just don't feel like it's a good deal. That's what I feel.
It's not. It's overpriced, but that's the same thing as like going to a theme park or going to some kind of concert or something and you buy a t-shirt and it's like $50. Then you go on Amazon, you get the same t-shirt for 19.50. It's the same difference.
One, I don't buy T-shirts.
Whatever. I'm
So,
just saying, making an example.
okay. That's fine. I need to have your laissez-faire attitude. You just go in and go, give me the Avengers 10, fill it up, and I'll take a large icy. And they're like, that'll be $29.95. You're like, here you go, keep the change. I'm out.
I bought pretzels and a large frozen Coke. You know how much it cost me? It was
What?
like $18. I don't care. I don't care.
It's so ridiculous. That's
I
about the
don't
price
care.
of my salmon dinner at Longhorn. That's exactly what it was. My salmon dinner, which came with rice and a side salad and Brussels sprouts, came to 18.50 for pretzel bites and your drink. That's what the movie
Yeah.
charged you. Is there not
Yes.
something wrong with that?
No. It's not because I don't. They don't point a gun to my head when I walk in and go, "Give me 18.50 now, or you're dead." I go up to them and I go, "Give me all the luxury, sweet and juicy, salty items you have. Here's the money. Thank you, ka-ching." I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. Now, if it was like 35.50, we might be having a different story here, but it's not, and it's less than $20. And I've got a decent snack for a movie that I can't wait to see again.
You've had a good attitude. You've been a positive influence on me on letting some of the things go, but
I try. It's a tall
uh,
order sometimes.
um, well, Bill, before we're going to be talking Avengers. Let's just say for the whole show because there's not much out there in the news file that I collect over here. I mean, there's
Okay.
some things that have dropped here. I'll I'll just read a few of them. I don't want to spend too long to it because we're here to talk about Avengers Endgame, and we'll probably just end up doing that mostly. Um, but I'm going to get your thoughts a little bit on a few things. The Boys trailer that's coming out of Amazon based on a book by Garth Ennis. Its trailer dropped. I know now this is a very obscure thing here for our nerd-like listeners. But did you watch the trailer?
I did.
Any thoughts on it that will make you? And this is sort of like what is it? A vigilante? It's sort of like the Justice League, but they're a little bit adolescent-like, sophomore in their jinx, and there is a side organization that's tasked with keeping them in line. That's sort of the general idea behind it. Did you like the trailer?
I had to take a shower in bleach to get it off me when it was over. Does that sound like I like
Wow, wow. You didn't like the person's head being crushed by the girl, but in between the lady's thighs.
it?
I think that's
Are
what.
we going to say exactly how the person's head was crushed, or I mean, I guess in
Oh
between the
no.
lady's thighs gives you an idea. So I'll just leave it at that. It was adult in nature, inappropriate
Uh,
for a superhero.
do you remember American Gods, where the lady was eating the guys through her lady vajayjay? You remember that part?
Yeah, I did. It reminded me of that scene, which also I found was vulgar. This is
I
just as vulgar.
I feel as American Gods was more fitting, that I didn't find it vulgar. I just didn't find that the writing or material to be good. But the Garth Ennis thing also is a little bit just more of, you know, something I would expect from like my 10-year-old nephew or something. Like fart jokes.
Listen, I get why young people like stuff like Deadpool and stuff like this. It was counterculture. When I was that age, I wanted to think everything had to be a little different and counterculture for it to be cool also. I'm 48, however, and I've come to realize that the counterculture doesn't always necessarily mean better. It just means counter. And sometimes they go too far with it. And I think just to be different and just to be anti is just not enough to keep me interested. That's
Okay.
all.
Star Wars news. It looks like they will be adapting um, a story called Knights of the Old Republic.
That's a rumor, honestly,
That
to
has
be
not been confirmed.
it has not been confirmed. But if you think about it, if this is the show that what are the people who guard Game of Thrones called? What are their names?
Benoff and Weiss.
Yeah. It sounds like some kind of old school Arthurian take on Star Wars, which if you see if you've seen Game of Thrones, it's kind of old school like that. So it would make sense because it seems to be their oeuvre to do kind of stuff like that.
Are you steeped in Knights of the Old Republic story?
I am not. It's a video game, and as we all know, I don't do video games. But it takes place thousands of years before the Skywalker saga. So
Oddly enough, Bill, I played this video game on the computer, Knights of the Old Republic, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. I didn't finish it because my computer was old and slow, and so it took up all the gigabytes for me just to load it up there and have it crash several different times. But for the few times that I did play it, I did kind of enjoy it.
so was the
I don't really,
storyline of the game?
I don't really recall the story as much, but there's like a coolness factor to it. I can't explain
Okay.
it.
I don't know that adapting video games has always been something that's been an issue for me because I'd have never played video games since the days of Pac-Man. I know that's just kind of ridiculous, but that's just the truth. So I'm fine with it. I just want the story to be tight.
Isn't it the problem with video game movies? It's really so much the story itself. You're cool with the idea and the casting, but usually where video games movies suffer is actually translating the plot or a good story.
Right,
You
because
know,
I mean, basically, it's based on something that's just meant to be like slash and bang to keep your attention and keep you going,
yeah.
which is fine. But there really needs to be some kind of solid story behind it for a Star Wars
Yeah, it's
story.
like watching Doom all of a sudden, and then you're just like, okay, I got it. There's Mars, and all of a sudden there's some demon creatures, and then they try to explain it, and then there's guns, and then you're just like, uh, it's more of an interesting video game than a movie. Um, Poor translation. So, well, since we're on this Game of Thrones, I'm going to skip these other stories. I mean,
Okay,
there's one, the Stranger Things plagiarism lawsuit is headed forward. We see
right.
that. Do you care that there might be an idea that these brothers of themselves, the Duffer brothers, may have, copied some other buddies' other ideas?
I mean, not really.
Yeah.
Do you?
No, but it's interesting though. It's interesting if they're found. Do they lose any type of credibility? Let's just say it goes to trial and it doesn't settle out of court or anything else, and it's found like by a jury of their peers that yeah, they kind of lifted some of this material from this guy. Does this somehow put a less of a shine on them in their future projects? Not that people are going to stop watching Stranger Things, but does this somehow make it like they're not the visionaries as everybody thought they were?
I mean, if they're found guilty, then I guess that would make you pause and think, maybe they're not
What?
as original or creative as they seem to be. I don't know. It's not like they robbed a baby out of its cradle. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I have to put some thought into it.
Okay.
I'm not super concerned about it
Um,
on a surface level.
the Swamp Thing trailer that's going to be dropping on the Disney Plus. Did you watch the Swamp Thing trailer?
It's not on Disney Plus. It's on DC Universe.
DC Universe. Thank you.
Um,
Sorry.
that's okay. I did not watch the trailer because, frankly, I have very little interest in getting involved in this show because seems like they have de facto canceled it before it even airs because they cut the order of the season, which was supposed to be 13 episodes, down to 10 at the last minute.
This is my
And
favorite. This is my favorite saying with super fan Carlos: grand opening, grand
grand
closing.
closing, right? So I don't know why I'm supposed to get invested in a show that the network that's making it seems not invested in. So if they don't care, why should I?
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess nothing. It seems like really bad press to have that even leak out.
Right. Well, I mean,
It,
this is what happens when you cancel or cut an episode order for a show. People are going to assume you're not invested in it. And all
but
the actors and
but
stuff
how
that are
does that
involved in
work
the
though?
show.
Do the people themselves, who I find are just whores, why would they ever cut the cord on a super hero related property in the golden age of it right now? Even if you're like, it really projects somehow that these people themselves are just like, this shit is just horrible. We're not
It's
going to even
either
throw
it's
any
either
more
that
money at this.
it's either that or DC Universe isn't exactly sweeping the world with its content. So maybe they ran out of money. I've been hearing that they're in trouble in certain financial sectors. So maybe they ran out of money, but that is another way of like, look, DC and the whole argument about what they're doing with their TV properties and their movie properties is a whole other show. But suffice it to say that as hard as I've tried to fight for them in their corner, and as long as I've tried to stay loyal to them and not give up on what their vision is, I quit.
Hmm.
So I have no faith in DC. I have no faith in their movies or their TV shows at this moment. Last thing I texted you about DC was "Wake me up when Wonder Woman 2 comes out." That still holds to be true. I'm tired of them jerking me around, Jay. I'm just tired of them
Uh,
fucking jerking me around.
um, what's this other rumor that I heard? Is it a rumor that I heard that Disney is thinking about trying to acquire all of Hulu? I think they have a part of it already.
I think they own 61% of Hulu, and I would not be surprised if they do try to acquire all of Hulu because why not? They swallow everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They're like the
so yeah,
great
that's
white whale, like Moby Dick. That's what they are. They're like out in the ocean just getting everything.
well, they certainly won this weekend, right?
Oh, sure. They're like, we got extra cash to burn. I need to know how much Kevin Feige gets paid. We got to get Superfan Melissa on this. She's good with the numbers. She was the only one that subscribes to. The great thing about Superfan Melissa is now then she'll send over articles. I know she sends them to you occasionally, or I forward them to you, and it's on the Wall
Right.
Street Journal. And it's so nice that she sends it. But there's not one of us in this circle of friends of ours that has any type of Wall Street Journal access. And so you go to click on the article, and it gives you like two sentences, like
Yeah, because it's
breaking
behind the
news.
paywall.
Bob Iger says, and you go to
But
click on it, and it's like must have Wall Street Journal subscription. You're like, what?
well, doesn't that make sense? Because I don't understand these magazines and stuff that publish whole entire articles on the web. Because then what? Why would you want to buy their magazine if you can read the article for free? Oh, is it supposed to be the other content that no one cares about they're writing about? I don't know. I don't know.
Um, well, I guess that would be interesting for Netflix for Disney to buy Hulu. Then it's because you got giants on the playing field. Um, there's a movie that seems to be going into production, which is called Yakuza, Yasuke, and it's the story of a Portuguese Mozambique that was taken as a slave over to Japan. And I think he's like the first African American male to set foot in Japan. And it's about him rising up through the culture to be like some sort of samurai, high end of Japanese society. Anyway, I sent it to you because it sounds very
Who's in
interesting
it?
and it's based on a true story.
Who's in
Um,
it?
I don't think anybody's been assigned to this yet.
So it's not made. It's not in production yet. It's just
No, it is not in production.
okay.
Um, um, but it sounds exciting. Moving on, I'm going to move on quickly here. Lorraine Warren is dead.
Who?
Lorraine Warren, she's the person that inspired the Conjuring series.
Oh, okay.
You didn't see that?
I did, but I. How did she
I,
inspire? Was she like that old little lady that was in the Poltergeist?
yeah, well, she's not the old lady. She was played by the young lady. I forget who the two main characters, the husband and wife, that went and investigated everything.
Okay.
That was her
Oh,
in
okay.
that role. Um, anyway,
Wasn't she old?
she was old, so she lived a very long and good life. So it wasn't anything surprising, but she got a little bit of movie fame for that. All right, let's just move on. Let's just get into the shit, Bill. We're just chomping around on the edges over here. Let's start with something that's not really close to your heart, but I received about 45 text messages yesterday between superfan Melissa, superfan Carlos, and fly on the wall superfan Melissa's husband Neil. So 42 text messages.
What was the hubbub about, bub?
We're talking Game of Thrones theories, coming up with a dead list. Who's going to make it? Name your 5 top people you think are going to bite it in tonight's episode.
42 texts. Didn't you just see them yesterday?
Yeah, but we were discussed after I saw them. The text came after that because we were still continuing to discuss it.
Okay.
And then it continued at 6:52 a.m. in the morning with more text flying.
Oh boy. Sorry, I wasn't in that thread.
Anyway, tonight's hour, 20 minutes, the Battle of Winterfell, very big episode. A lot of people are excited about it. I don't know.
Oh, the one that's supposed to be like the biggest battle ever filmed in TV and
Yeah,
history.
and I never got a chance to verify this information, but there were some nerds at work talking. I overheard them, and the guy was asking, what's the longest on-screen like battle?
Wouldn't that
And
be Battle of the Five Armies? Wasn't that like the whole movie?
well, I guess it depends on when you start it.
Right.
Like I said, I never verified the information, but the one guy, of course, said Saving Private Ryan, and the other guy responded and said, no, it's fictional. And as soon as he said fictional, in my mind, I went straight to the Two Towers because that's a long ass battle that
It
starts,
is.
slows, and whatever else. But I never timed it to know whatever else.
Okay.
Five Armies. I guess it depends on where you start that battle, but sure. But anyway, tonight's supposed to be longer.
So is this the battle is
And the
so
director, and I'm sorry I don't have this information in front of me. The director of this episode is also the director that did other um, highly, I don't know, highly regarded episodes in Game of Thrones, The Battle of Hardhome, and a few others. And he was talking about. I read the article where he was talking about filming it, and he goes, part of doing a battle is like, you've got to do other things within that time frame. And he talked about the Two Towers being like an inspiration because, he goes, you just can't be fighting for 20 minutes in a row. People are going to get bored. So you got to, figure ways to kind of break it out, keep things moving, but not just have constant explosions going on for an overextended period of time. It's got me excited that apparently it also took like several months. They were in production for several months for this, hours and hours of going over how this is going to go down. Makes me, it puts it in like, they're putting in the work trying to put out a great product. I
so
appreciate
does
it
this
though.
battle take over the rest of the series? Is this battle stretching out over the last 4 episodes of the whole show? Or
I
what?
don't I don't know how to answer that question. I think they might have released the names of the episodes, but I don't know. I don't think this is like Battle Winterfell Part 1. That's not my
Okay.
understanding.
Okay.
So, um, but I'll
Is there gonna be
find
dragons? Is
what's that?
there gonna be dragons?
Don't know. Not sure. I don't know. I have no idea. Um, George Martin indicated in between eating ice cream and going to McDonald's that his ending won't be that different from the show's ending. And as a fan, that makes me sort of kind of excited, even though I know that the Benoff and Weiss don't have all the small character things that George might write in his book. That might not make it, but the general broad strokes, it makes me comfortable in knowing like if this person dies, or if this ending happens and this person gets the Iron Throne, that's how it's going to end in his book. Except maybe some of the details of how that I like the consistency there. I don't want two different stories.
Right.
In all honesty, that's kind of annoying to me. Um, Also, are you steeped in any Game of Thrones? Are you excited about it? You're not even watching it. You don't care.
I watched one episode of the
Oh,
Game of
here we
Thrones show
go.
that you forced me to watch, and ever since then, Game of Thrones is on my do not watch list.
Okay. Well, okay. I sent you this thing from this article. I was reading this thing on like visionaries and Steve Jobs and things of that nature. And the way I was kind of relating this to the movie industry was, I think when I sent you text or we had a phone conversation in light of Game of Thrones ending, is that when you have these people that create a universe, Martin, George Lucas, Tolkien, um, C.S. Lewis. You have these people that create this world and characters. When those people die, sell it, or pass on, um, I feel as though sometimes, occasionally, that the work may suffer because you don't have somebody that has their type of passion or vision or where they want to go with the story. And what ends up happening is you have other people in the room putting their 2 cents in, trying to go, well, I think this is where we should go. I think this would make fans happy, as opposed to having somebody go, this is what I'm doing. This is what my character does. I'm not taking a vote on what you guys think he should wear. I believe he should wear a shirt that says Pepsi on it because that would be like synergy with our corporate sponsor. I don't care. My character doesn't wear a Pepsi shirt. I feel like a lot of that, it just got me thinking that it doesn't get me excited sometimes when the visionary leaves because I have a distrust of the people. And there is a quote, Bill. Am I talking too much?
No, I'm just going to give
Okay.
my thoughts on this when you're done.
Okay. There's a quote here from this Steve Jobs article because obviously they were looking at him as a visionary and applying this to the movie industry here. Quote, the reason is that without the visionary despot, groupthink takes over. Everyone's got their own agenda, and all these disparate visions tend to cancel each other out. Ultimately, the only criteria for deciding anything is either what's best for shareholders, short term thinking, or what users want, obsolete thinking. At Apple, Jobs' rule was so absolute that if Jobs wanted decision A, and most of the board, most of the executives, most of the user surveys, and most of the shareholders wanted decision B, there was no question we go with A. And that's what I think misses when you somehow lose a visionary. Other people have other agendas and they answer. And part of this, I don't want to open up this can of worms outside of your enjoyment of the movie. I felt as though something like with Justice League, after the perceived disappointment of Batman versus Superman, what was leaked out in the media, whether true or not, was that you had other people coming in, putting their 2 cents in, going, I believe the movie was too long and this needs to be shorter, or we need to do this more. You had other people coming in the room who weren't necessarily directing and or writing the movie, putting their 2 cents in. And these are the things that really just drive me mad because sometimes obviously it works out, Bill. This is not some sort of like a all or nothing proposition. But generally speaking, I'm always going to side with the person that's usually creating the material or whatever it's lifted from in their decision. I'm not going to go with some sort of what the shareholders or what the accountants. I don't care about what the users, the fans think about what should be done. Okay, I'm writing the material. If you like it, you will come. It's not a voting process. We're not voting on Game of Thrones going, I hope so and so doesn't die. Sure, that's what you hope, but if the writer wants this direction to go, then that's the direction it goes. You're on or not. But the reason why you're there is because you liked exactly what he created. I'm always going to be on this point. I'm sorry. I've gone. I feel like it's one of those conversations we have after work where I ramble forever. But anyway, thoughts, comments,
I think
criticisms?
I think it depends on how you personally feel about the stuff that's being created by quote other people unquote. Because I think that for example, with Star Wars, there comes a time when the creator, and you've said this to me before, because you're a creative genius at one point in your life and you're young and full of spunk and you want to get out there and your vision for what the future is speaks to a wide swath of people doesn't always mean that decades later, once you've gone through a whole life experience and things have happened, not that you're no longer a creative genius, but that maybe your vision no longer appeals to as wide a swath of people as it once did because it just doesn't.
Yeah.
And therefore, there are people who come along and say, well, we more have our finger on the pulse of what the audience and the fans enjoy. So how about you give us a spin at it? Now, in particular, I'm talking about the Disney sale of Lucasfilm and the
Can I
sequel creators.
can I comment on that real quick?
Okay.
Keep
Yeah.
your thought. I see that part when you say like the pulse of what's going on. I don't. I feel like that's very. Maybe you were just using that word just loosely. That's what I don't want. I agree that I usually say that at some point in time, when Francis Ford Coppola is 98, you know, I don't think necessarily his skills are going to still be there, or his eye, or whatever else like that, or the story he wants to tell is just not something that's just really hitting. Like it's like the writing the comic books in the 50s. The styles are completely different nowadays. Those stories don't, and that writing doesn't fit. Everything's a little bit more layered now. It's past. I got it. But it's not somehow that I expect that the writers sit there and go, we have to start using the words cool, KEWL, because that's what the young kids like. I find that to be ridiculous. The style just seems to fit what's going on. You're not using a corded phone. You're using a wireless phone. I get it, but you're not adapting the material because you're chasing somebody to like you. It's I feel like it's a different way of looking at it. You're not sitting there going like, I want you to like me. What do I have to do? I'm going out here and I'm doing a jig for you. Just be yourself and write your shit. And if it's good enough, the people will come. I feel like if you're desperate, it's not something that's going to last. But anyway, let me add one other thing here, real quick. Um, the Ryan Johnson thing, the sell over to Disney.
Right.
What I appreciate partly is that when he was writing The Last Jedi, he had a certain way that he wanted to go about doing it in a certain direction. I appreciate that. I didn't necessarily like it, but I like the idea of somebody sitting there being like, I've got big balls and this is what I'm doing. Okay. This is how I'm telling the story and this is the direction I'm going, as opposed to taking a vote as to what's going on rebelscum.com or, Darth Maul fans or us to find out what they like. I'm going to be telling the story. I'm going to be advancing it. This is my vision. It's not a fan voting. I mean, it's some of these things are all about fan service and fan fiction. I'm not saying the stories can't be great, but I prefer somebody to come in and have a hard nosed direction. I think that's when the best material comes out. Not from the guys sitting around the counter like Earl Perlmutter who going like, I don't know. I'm thinking we should put like surveys indicate that if we have 3 women and 2 men in there, we sell a lot more tickets. That's not good storytelling for me, Bill. That doesn't get me fired up about anything that they're doing, as opposed to somebody sitting there going, I've got a great story. I hope you like what I'm about to do. Not that I'm trying to look at you and go, Bill, wink, wink. I'm going to put Darth Maul in there. Yeah, you like Darth Maul, right? All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry, interrupt you. Last time.
What difference does it make in the end if your vision doesn't match up with what people who you're selling your vision to or selling them on aren't necessarily enamored with your vision? This is the conclusion that George himself
Yes,
came
then the
to.
show fails. I don't find a show otherwise that's going to sit there and do a retread of everything else to be anything successful or go down in history as being like, oh God, this has really changed the wheel. That's my point. You can do a regular show. They're on the CW all the time.
Well, this is the
Okay,
conclusion.
they're on Sci-Fi Channel. Everybody can do a show that sits there and goes, I'm going to do my own Walking Dead show. You can do that. It's the people that sit there and try to stretch it and come up with a different take on it and do something else that sit there and hit the money on it. That sits there and starts a bigger universe, Bill. I mean, you can try to do the dark universe. They tried to make it somewhat likable for everybody. Let's put Tom Cruise in it and get all these other stars. That didn't get you anywhere. I'm talking, I think if you want to sit there and really knock things out of the park, you need to be original on shit. If the shit doesn't work, there's a million shows that don't work. But if you're going to create $1 billion empire, then I think you probably have to be having somebody that's out there doing something that's kind of like not just sitting there going, what do the fans want? You know?
Well, the conclusion that George came to, which is why he ended up selling the company, was that he got tired of people beating up on his original vision of the prequels, in which everybody said, this is not what we want. Jar Jar is not it. The Attack of the Clones is not it. Revenge of the Sith is better, but it's still not the Star Wars we want. So he got tired of that and said, I'm just going to sell the company to people who will give the fans more of what they want. And for me, and this is the example that I'm using because this is the one that comes to my mind most, or to the forefront of my mind the most,
Okay.
is Disney's sequel trilogy to Star Wars started out with The Force Awakens with the best of both worlds, giving you some original. Also, it relied a little bit, maybe in some areas, too much on the familiar, but also the familiar, which is bringing back the feeling that people had with the original Star Wars over the prequels. And I found it to be tremendously successful. Ryan Johnson's interpretation, less so. I like Ryan Johnson's take, but I also realize it's not what people were expecting to get after The Force Awakens. And again, that becomes, the fan base becomes divided. And just as we're all sort of back on the Star Wars tip with everybody reuniting with their love of The Force Awakens after the prequels divided everybody in the first place. We're back to this position where somebody's giving you something, in this case, Rian Johnson, in the first case, it was George Lucas himself, that they consider pushing the narrative forward, but almost to the neglect or to the detriment of the original feeling of the movies in the first place. So for me, I see the danger of this happening, but I also see the benefits of it happening. And by this, I mean fan service. I don't necessarily need a world without any fan service. Fan service, I think, has a certain point and a place, and for our age group and specifically, I think is an important part of going to the movies. Nostalgia is part of it. Pushing the envelope forward can also be, but you also have to be careful how far you push it. So I'm down with a combination of both. I don't want a repeat of everything I've already seen, but I don't necessarily want something that is so different and so original that I don't recognize the property that you're giving me, especially with one of these old school properties like Star Wars.
Okay. All right. I'll beat this dead horse with you later on. We'll continue this conversation because this is going to be on my mind as I watch Game of Thrones, and I think of Benioff and Weiss heading on to do other things.
Right.
And my whole thing with them is they're copying some sort of material that's already been out there, i.e., like Peter Jackson interpreting, Lord of the Rings. Then that's wonderful. I think it's another story than to actually create something. That's the creating something that's based on somebody else already started is the issue, because then all of a sudden you have other people in the room telling you we're not going to go that route. Why I like to use this character? Well, no, nobody likes Jar Jar. Okay, so we're not going to be using Jar Jar. Well, I like him. Well, that's not going to work for us. Okay. There's just a lot more things as opposed to when you had George running the show. If George wanted Jar Jar, he got Jar Jar. Okay. If you didn't,
fans rejected it though.
You can go work. Well, that's the problem. I mean, it's not the whole idea that that's the whole the material. That's like watching Game of Thrones and going, I was very upset that Ned Stark died. Okay. That's the story. Okay, I don't get to take a vote and be like, I watched your movie now. I like you to remove Jar Jar to make it acceptable for me. Then you don't watch the show. You didn't have to go see Attack of the Clones.
You have to follow this lane of thought though, all the way to the end, Jay.
You don't have to. You don't have to continue. I don't. When Tolkien's writing the story, he's not sitting there running around asking everybody and taking polls in each community of going, if it's okay that I have this happen, or that Gollum gets killed in the end, is it okay?
If
it's not a vote. It's not a vote when you're sitting there making the stuff.
It may be in some ways, maybe it should be, is what I'm saying. If you cut down a tree in the forest and nobody's around to hear it fall, did you really cut down the tree? If you drive away the fans from your property and with your original line of thinking or your vision of where the story should go, to the point that no one likes your story anymore, is it relevant that you wrote the story?
I find
if no one's around to read it?
I view the opposite in that your fans will drive away with you trying to not do something original or push it forward. That's my point. Your fans are going to leave you while you're sitting there trying to chase them. The fans will leave you because you're sitting there you're trying to be like, hey, by the way, we're on Twitter too, and we're trying to be cool. And by that time, the fans are off and doing something else. Okay. As soon as you get on Facebook, as soon as you're like, oh God, the kids are on Facebook, and now your mom comes to you and go, I'm on Facebook. What's the first thing you say? Well, I'm no longer on Facebook. Oh, what are you on? I'm on Tumblr now. And then 30 days later, she's like, well, I'm on Tumblr now. And the kid's like, oh, that's that's old people now. We moved on. We're now doing this now. You're always behind. You're never ahead, Bill. And so eventually with them always trying to sit there and be like, everybody thinks this is cool, the people end up getting bored with the material because you're not advancing it. You're just chasing them, and they're fickle. People are fickle.
I think the box office for The Force Awakens is an argument against the fact that people will be chased away by that.
No, no, I'm
Now
not
that's
talking
just one
each time. I'm
example.
just saying over time here,
Right.
just sitting in the same spot, it's not going to help the franchise. You've got to have somebody pushing it forward and not just being like, we're just going to make a Darth Maul series. That's short term. We're all going to watch Darth Maul, but I don't think it's going to help the life of the universe that you want to create. That's my point.
Well, we'll see when they make the show The Mandalorian and they make the movie Old Republic, or they make Star Wars story movies that are not related to the Skywalkers after this saga is completed on episode 9. We'll see how much of their disconnecting it from nostalgia and the past love that people have for Star Wars, how that works. We'll see if it works. I mean, that'll be a great litmus test for whether people want just plain Star Wars stories set in that galaxy far, far away, or if it was more of a connection to the characters that they were telling these stories about, as well as set in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, this will be a great proving ground.
I feel bad for the fans that have listened to me rant and rave over this issue and sitting there going, I turned on the podcast for the Avengers Endgame. Are you going to be talking about the Avengers anytime soon? I feel like this is some sort
Well,
of,
we
we
can
talked
move
to
on.
our production assistant and they're like, if you really want the people to listen to your show, you have to end with the good stuff, because if you give them the good stuff, they're going to turn off your shit and not listen to your other ramblings.
Right. So are you trying to
It-
segue over to Endgame now, or is that what you're doing?
yeah, I don't know where to start
Okay.
with Avengers Endgame, Bill. I don't even know where to start.
Should I start then?
Sure.
Okay. Avengers Endgame, to me, because we've discussed this a lot this weekend, and
We've discussed it over 2.5 days, where I'm
right.
over discussing it.
Well,
Well, no, not no. I'm gonna discuss it, because as soon as you start talking, it's gonna end up, invigorating me. But I think I didn't tell you, but my sister called me earlier,
you
because
didn't.
she went and saw the movie. I think probably last night, and she didn't get out till like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And she wanted to. She called me at 12 o'clock, and she's like, "Hi, I just want to discuss Endgame." And I was like, I had an attitude. I was
Yeah.
like, I've already discussed this with Bill, Superfan Carlos, his son. I'm done. I've talked about it for 3 days in a row. I'm over it. And she's like, well, sheesh.
I
Well,
know, right? Because that's
I'll
the way she
call
should be.
I'll call somebody else to have this discussion with. I'm
I
like,
mean,
send me your thoughts in an email. But go ahead.
well,
I'm ready for it. I'm getting hyped up now.
okay. We both discussed the fact that we had several reservations about this movie when we first saw the movie. Okay, the first time we saw it Thursday night. Then we both went back and saw it for our second viewing on Friday afternoon, and we both came out and agreed that the movie improved for us upon the second viewing. Sometimes when you
Don't
see
speak
these
for me.
things,
I don't like you locking me into my position, but that is correct.
am I making that up? Is that incorrect?
That is correct, but I don't
Okay,
prefer
great.
you locking me down. It's like you're putting me, you're setting up and putting me in a position. So if I deny it, you'd be like this. No, no, this is exactly what you said. But go ahead.
Okay. Um, the movie is 3 hours of solid character material. I mean, I will say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. My score for it as a total is an A minus, when I would give Infinity War an A plus. Um, the reason why there's a difference of a half a grade point in there for me is surely based on the fact that what I would call the movie is lopsided or uneven. The beginning 2/3 of the movie is all mostly character development and them discussing like what's happened and how they can fix what's happened and going back to fix what's happened with the snap. And a lot of that lacks a lot of action set pieces in the first 2/3 of the movie, which makes it feel heavily weighted towards one side, which is the last third of the movie, in which, let me just say, you get, or I got, just about the coolest action scene in a superhero movie I have ever seen. I mean, I'm not sure how long the final battle of the movie is, but it certainly includes just about everything I would have wanted to see, including Cap wielding Thor's hammer for the first time.
Are you going to discuss every little bit part here? Every little bit part? Or are you giving me the general outline before you
I'm
get into into all the
giving
specifics here? Are
I'm
you really
giving
going to do that?
general outline.
Okay. Yeah, because you're about to head into specifics, I see.
Okay,
This is a
so
problem with you. You get very excited about it. I can tell in your voice. You're just like, yes. And then when Cap twirled his hair, and then there was this other thing, you're about to get lost in the specifics, Bill. I'm just slowing you
I'm
down.
trying to keep it general. I'm just trying to keep it, why this movie was
All right,
great
go
the way
ahead.
it
I'm
was
not going to
rated.
stop your
Okay.
flow.
Okay, so you get cool scenes like Thor wielding both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker against Thanos at the end. And then at the end of the movie, you get all of the snapped characters coming back for a huge battle, circa the Lord of the Rings prequel or prelude in Fellowship of the Ring. And it just becomes this like huge adventure pick. Um, but you have to wait for that through the first 2/3 of the movie, in which, like I said, there's a lot of talking and a lot of planning and a lot of plotting, but it's all golden material. There's nothing that feels wasted or boring or not as exciting. It just feels like there's so many characters and so much story that they have to get through that it gets a little bogged down at times with speechifying. Um, but as a whole of the movie, I loved it. I think it's certainly a worthy successor to Infinity War, which I still, because of its evenness and more action set pieces, consider to be a better movie as a whole movie. But when you take that part and you add in this part, you have an opus that's really probably the greatest superhero movie ever told. And I'm including the original Superman in that. So this is how I
Um,
feel.
I think for the movie was it was 3 hours long. It did not feel like 3 hours. Both times that we saw it, it moves for being mostly character development, as you call it. It moves at a pretty brisk pace where it doesn't seem like 3 hours, which is a credit to the filmmakers, the directors themselves, whoever cuts it. That mostly when you hear 3 hours, you're just like, I don't know if I can do this, and you're going to be napping. But it's interesting how it keeps your attention and keeps it moving enough to where you're not tired. At least
Yeah,
that's the
it
way I
wasn't
felt about
boring.
it.
I mean, it
Um,
was long, but not boring. I don't know how to explain that.
um, I'm using your word because I like it. The word you've been using it, uneven, and it's a different type of movie than Infinity War. And depending on how you look at it, different is good. I'm not saying that different is bad. It's just it's different. And the difference for me was not necessarily as good as Infinity War. We watched Infinity War on Friday night, and
Right.
Infinity War has just really good pacing where I have character development and I also have action throughout the whole film.
Right.
Character, action, action, character, both mixed in. There's just a lot going on, and it's more what fits to my idea what I would want in a comic book movie. And with this one here, it's sort of what you just said. Like that's 2 hours, roughly 2 hours 30 minutes of character development and a hell of a battle at the end. Um, that's fine. I'm because it's concluding. I would just prefer it to be a little bit more even, like Infinity War. So, and based on that alone, it's still a good movie. I mean, it's like what you said. It's well done. It's put together well. The actors, the writing, they played their roles and they gave the material, and it's enjoyable. It's just a different type of enjoyable. It's like I enjoy hamburgers, but for my Saturday night dinner celebration, I don't necessarily want a hamburger. I was hoping to have steak. They're still both good. I was just hoping for steak. So I give the movie a B. Um, so that's where I'm at on my letter grade, if you will, Bill.
What was your favorite scene in the movie versus
Well, see, this is the thing about it is my favorite scene in the movie is it's obviously it's an action scene, and it's complete. Like one of my favorite characters in terms of villains is Thanos. I think he's a fleshed out, just cool ass villain. You know, not a villain of the week. He's treated as a tough villain to beat, and they hold to that throughout all these movies. It's not like somebody comes in and punches him once and he's out, and then we just forget about him. I'm on to the next movie. You know, his actions reverberate through several different things throughout all these characters. My favorite scene is when he comes back and he's beamed into whatever their present timeline. Um, and he beams down, and then the three main heroes, the pillars, Thor, Cap, and Iron Man, they go to battle him. And he's like, what's the line we were repeating? He goes, "You could not live with your failures. And what did that get you? It led you back to me." And then they have this badass battle where the Thor's eyes light up, Cap picks up the hammer, Iron Man does his thing, and they just go toe to toe. I felt the crowd cheer. As soon as that was going on, you cannot be a comic book fan or a comic book geek or anything else and not just sit there and smile as what you're watching on screen, because it's just so cool. And the Russos always had a way with like putting these characters in the best position that shows their powers off and what they can do, and it just lets you revel in it. It's just a classic scene, followed up by, I'm sure you're going to say, I'm not going to take it from you, the splash page. But anyway, that's my favorite scene. What is yours?
My favorite scene, oddly enough, is not any action scene, even though it is pretty much the best action scene ever directed in a superhero movie. The splash page, as you said, it looks just like a splash page in a comic book when they come back. All the characters come back at the end. My favorite scene, and something that just like made my heart just jump, was when old Steve comes back and he's sitting on the bench, and Bucky and Sam see him sitting there when he was supposed to come back from taking the Infinity Stones back to where they were. It's all very complicated. We can't get into it, or it'll be a 6-hour show. But when Cap, you realize that Cap went through his life normally and lived his 70-year life with Peggy, and he passes the torch of the Captain America shield onto Sam. And Sam says, I'll do my best. That to me was just like what it's all about, what Cap was all about as a character, what Sam is all about as a character, and then moving forward with the Captain America mantle, despite the fact that Chris Evans is pretty much done with the series. I was hoping that they would do something like that, either with Bucky or with Sam. They chose Sam. I'm perfectly fine with that. I want to see Sam be Captain America now. God let them in phase 4, when they announce it, whenever that's going to be, they announce a Sam Wilson is Captain America movie.
That's a hell of a thing for them to actually have you on board with Sam, because usually, you're just anti-Me Too and anti-diversity. So for you to be like, hell yeah, let's have Sam Wilson as Captain America.
Yeah.
Be happy with you actually like the splash page of all the female superheroes with Captain Marvel going, how am I going to get through? And all the women lining up. We'll pave a way for you. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
okay.
supposedly I just heard a interview with Kevin Feige where he said that's a hint that they might go there with what's called the A-Force, I guess, which is the all-female version of the Avengers, which I did not know existed. Did you?
No.
Okay. Well, there is one.
I wouldn't have bought that comic book. No offense to my ladies out there.
Would you buy a ticket to that movie?
Bill, that's what we do. So I'm kind of locked into buying the ticket.
All right. So let me ask you then, what exactly is your reticence to acknowledge the coolness of that one particular scene when all the females come
I don't want to take away from you. We're going over your thing, but the problem with it's just the setup. Part of it is it's not so much I don't have a problem with the all-female team. It's just that somehow when Captain Marvel lines up, this is a huge battle going on. Thanos has landed his whole army. All Wakanda's there, and all these heroes are fighting, still trying to get the Infinity Gauntlet. And you have Captain Marvel land for a second, and then it's almost like, okay, let's pause the battle. All the women come over to this side real quick and line up next to Captain Marvel so we can have this photo. It's like, You know, it's like somebody bringing a camera, going, "Okay, just the ladies, just ladies, get in the frame. Stop the battle. I know people are screaming in pain. Tony Stark's been hit; he's bleeding. But let's just get all the ladies and have them pose, and then okay, let's pick back up in the fight again." It's
Girl
just
power.
yeah, it's just weird. You know, they didn't do like, okay, all the guys line up on this side too. No, 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 just the minorities. Let's get the minorities in a shot. Let's get them down. Like, okay, Sam, you know, Black Panther, Shuri, let's all get you lined up. Okay, let's do. You know, it's a weird setup. Not that I'm against the all girl
The,
power.
the one thing I would say, or as far as character development goes, it's spot on. There's a lot of very essential character beats in this movie. But there are still some characters, and I come back to this word often with describing this movie, the unevenness of some characters who were prominent or more prominent, or at least had, it felt in Infinity War that everybody got a moment. It didn't necessarily feel like in this movie everybody really got a moment. I mean, there are moments, but I felt like some characters were short shrifted. And then, it just didn't feel to me as well spaced out or as everybody's getting a moment that Infinity War did feel. Let's talk about Fat Thor.
Wait a second. Before we get to Fat Thor, there's a lot to unravel here before
Okay.
we get into some of the
Because I was going to say, let's move on to our least favorite scene.
Okay, okay,
And that
okay.
that to me is
Let's do that because I wanted to kind of give some of the positives before I sit there and unload because I think fans know me as being very negative on some of this shit, and so I don't want to be like, I enjoyed the movie thoroughly. It's a very good movie. It's not as good as Infinity War in my opinion, but that's only because I just want more action. I like the characters, I like the development, but it's kind of I don't go if you like Fast and Furious, you don't go to the Fast and Furious just to have Vin Diesel sit and talk for 30 minutes and wax wise about certain things. You're like, I want to see some cars driving up skyscrapers. That's a part of it. Superhero movie, I think, requires for me that there be some action interspersed with developing the characters. That's what it is. And but otherwise, these people are enjoyable. They play a good role. The writing is good. Um,
splash page aside. The issue for me with that, them not coming back until the splash page scene at the end, is that maybe that's why the characters felt like they got short shrifted because most of them that were unsnapped didn't appear until the end of the movie. And while everyone does get like sort of a nod to their, I felt like, for example, there was no like Star Lord until we see him see Gamora. There's no, barely even when they bring back Groot, there's no really acknowledgement between Rocket and Groot that Groot is back. It's just like, bam, they're hitting the ground running. I would have felt like there should have been a scene of Rocket being grateful or happy to see Groot. That it felt like a skipped or missed opportunity.
yeah,
Things like that.
this is primarily one of those things like, okay, we're ending this movie, but we're really going to be focusing on the big three. Okay, that's who
Right.
brought us here, and that's how we're going out with the big three.
Right.
You guys
And
will
that,
have these other heroes will have their opportunity to put their stamp on it in the next phase. But right now we're concluding this chapter and we're gonna end it with these people that started it
right. And
essentially.
that started it all. And the thing that it is, and it feels like, and it is a love letter to the original cast. I mean, there is mostly, and I'm sure that's why they ended it, Infinity War, I mean, by keeping just the original cast plus Rocket alive so that they could focus and give these people closure. Natasha's death scene is certainly a highlight. Um, but all of the original characters, it was sort of fan service to them by going back and giving you the sort of side issues of them going back and into the original scenes where the Infinity Stones were. So you get glimpses of Guardians of the Galaxy when they stole the Power Stone. You get glimpses of the original Battle of New York and the Avengers when the Tesseract and the Scepter were. All of that felt like a highlight reel, and not in a bad way, of the original Avengers. And
I
go
know we're
ahead.
skipping around. Let me add something based on what you said with Natasha dying. A huge thing for me throughout this whole Infinity War Endgame problem is I can't get into the character's passing because I don't know if it's real or not. It doesn't have a thing for me because you have time travel, you have parallel universes, you have time stones. I don't know how seriously to take it. Now with the passing of Tony Stark, that seemed real to me. That seemed final. That seemed as though we're not going to be playing some game and bringing him back. That would seem like that would do a disservice to the whole storyline that they did. Um, but Natasha, Black Widow, that I couldn't get into it. Like, okay, she's sacrificing herself, but there's still a part of me going, well, is there a way to bring her back? I mean, can you do something? Like, there's nothing because, and I put it on them. And every read comic books, I'm like, this doesn't seem permanent. They can come up with some sort of rule, like they can bring another villain, can shake her place, and she can leave the Soul Stone. Um, you know, it's weird for me, and
So it doesn't feel permanent. So it doesn't feel like
no, sort of like the whole idea when they undid the snap and we got all our heroes back. Okay, so we got those back. All right, so I kind of knew that, but there's always this kind of like, is really Black Widow really gone or is she not gone? And if somehow there was a way conveyed to me, even though they said throughout the movie, like, it can't be undone. That's what the Red Skull said.
mhm.
You go talk to him if that's the case. And part of it is I don't know if that's true or not. So I can't sit there and like bawl out with tears and be like, oh, that's tough loss, because I'm like, I just don't know. I mean, the
To
Tony
me,
Stark obviously felt good. I mean, felt not felt good, but it felt legitimate. Like I know we're not probably getting him back. They're not going to do that. But Black Widow, I can't say that for sure, unless you told me like she's refused to sign a contract, and Kevin Feige says we won't ever be using her again. You know,
the thing about it is they found a way to bring Gamora back without resurrecting Gamora, and
yes,
now
right. Are we going
that
to
was
be
part
doing
of
that again with Black Widow? Are we cool with us plucking her out from another parallel universe again? It
I
seems
think
like
one
that just you're getting to an area of being tricksy for me, where you're just like,
Trixie, it's false, Trixie. Um, I think that is a danger that they have to be careful of. I think it is now that they've opened this time travel worm can or can of worms. This becomes an out for them, an easy out for them to kill off characters and easily resurrect them.
right
I
now.
think
No, see, I don't want. See, this is the thing about it, Bill. Based on what you're, I don't require them to kill off the characters. That's not a requirement that I have. And so this is not Game of Thrones, but what I do kind of think that if you're going to take the bold step of killing them off, then if that's your storyline, I'm fine with that. But I don't want to play a game like you sit there and go, you killed the character, and everybody's like, oh, that's shocking. And then 2 movies later, you're just like, well, we went to Earth 2224, and we got Scarlett Johansson back, but she's playing a different Black Widow. She's a little bit darker in this universe, and we brought her back. And I'm just going to kind of roll my eyes, being like, it just seems disrespectful to the story that you just told and the emotions that you pulled out of me or what you want me to feel. It starts to diminish, and it's going to further diminish every time you pull that trick. It hasn't happened. It's just that it's there. Anyway,
it's certainly like you said. It's the danger is that this will be a well that they can go back to time and time again to resurrect characters that they want to off at least temporarily for impact. And the more, like you said, the more they do it, the lesser the impact becomes.
do you feel that
But I
Scarlett
think
Johansson's character is as Black Widow is done in
no,
this?
we know that there's a Black Widow movie, but we
But
also know, or from what we've heard, that it's a prequel movie based even before the original Avengers. So they don't necessarily have to bring her back from the dead to do that movie.
right.
Um,
But do you think she'll be doing future movies in the current Phase 4 storyline and moving forward?
um, I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
I don't, but I don't. I'm not. I don't know
Sure.
that for sure. But um, I think that they are aware that it becomes a danger. I think that bringing Gamora back without resurrecting her, was a way of having their cake and eat it too. But you can only do that so many times, also. Um, So,
All right, let's get into it. Fat Thor.
okay. Fat Thor is an issue for me in this movie. It's an issue because he becomes
It's an issue for both of us. You
okay.
can speak for me.
It becomes a one note joke that goes on throughout the whole movie, and at certain points, it starts to feel mean or fat shaming. And as a fatty, I'm not particularly pleased with fat shaming. So um, I think if they would have just had him be out of shape and still be Thor, as far as like able to be taken seriously instead of like the dude from the Big Lebowski, um, it might have worked a little bit better. But I felt like they were really running the fat jokes into the ground with Thor, and it kind of felt a little bit mean spirited. And in this age where everybody's so politically aware, you couldn't have had him make fun of black people in that way or women in that way. That would be considered unacceptable. So why is it acceptable to then have open season on the fact that he's gotten out of shape and overweight, and everybody seems to think that it's open season to make a joke about?
Superfan Carlos, he said he went and saw it with his son, and he's like, "Yeah, Fat Thor." We laughed, and I sat there, and I go, "I get it," because when Thor came out in the fat suit, um, I laughed because it's obviously the whole idea that he's gone into depression, and that he's just let himself go.
Right.
You know, he's drinking beer with crumbs in his beard. I laughed. I thought it was funny, but I think after a while, which this is what I expect more from these writers and directors of this type of epic filmmaking, is that they don't keep going to the same well, doing the same joke, beating the dead horse. It becomes a little bit sophomoric for me,
Right.
and it doesn't fit the rest of what the movie is trying to project in giving these characters. Essentially, it's a classic send off. You're pulling up the lights and having them walk on stage and announcing them, and they're giving it speeches, and thanks for telling a grand story. And you're doing fart jokes. Essentially, the fat joke was, you know I'm all for the idea. Like, I think the article we read, which pointed out there was a golden opportunity to kind of discuss, not that it had to get this deep on it about mental illness and coping with it and falling in depression, but it was an idea you can sit there and take a quick laugh. But every second, not every second, but every time you had Thor on there was this concentration on his belly or something about eating a salad or whatever else, and it was unnecessary. You could have just kind of sat there and say, this is where he's at right now. He's let himself go because he was depressed. But it's not an opportunity every time somebody looks at him and starts going make pig noises. It becomes a distraction, and uh,
And
you
it's
know,
played for laughs. It's played for comic relief and silliness, and it sort of makes the character of Thor seem
yeah.
superfluous and not.
And even at the end when he's sitting there going like, "Listen, Valkyrie, you can be a better leader of these people than I am." Instead of just taking a moment for what it is, he goes to shake her hand and we focus on his belly. You know, he's still fat. It's kind of. I think it's the influence of Tahani Wahidi.
Taika Waititi. I'm going to make a word or a name like dictionary for you so that you can get all these names right. I swear to
I
God.
feel like this is the influence from Thor Ragnarok of um, the comedy, but not in a good way. I understand that you've indicated to me that Chris Hemsworth kind of was bored with the way that Thor was started off in Thor 1 and 2, and he needed to be refreshing because Chris has comedic chops. I just don't think that this fat Thor, the way it was played throughout the movie, um, was a good thing. I think it's
Now
something that kind of that doesn't fit.
I will say this. My primary issues with Fat Thor is the first part of the movie, because by the action scene of the movie, what I actually do appreciate is them when his lightning strikes him and he finally gets his mojo back, and the hammers fly to him and his eyes light up, he's still fat. So they don't obliterate his weight with the whole
They
him
don't slim
gaining
him
his
down.
powers back. Right.
Yeah, I
And
was hoping they would slim him down.
yeah,
Though.
I know you were. But I think that that was kind of cool. I mean, they could have chosen to do that, and yet they didn't. They let Thor
Sure.
be overweight and still be able to fight like a badass in that battle.
Yeah, Thor's
And
like,
I
I may
think
be
that was
fat Thor, but I can still get it.
That's right. And I appreciate that. I mean, they cleaned him up, they braided his beard and gave him some ponytails or what have you, and they made him look like he takes a bath. Because I'll tell you, fat people do bathe.
Uh-huh.
That
I'm
it
sure in
was,
the outtakes, Bill, there was a scene during the battle with Thanos that he was sitting on the sideline going, "I'm coming, Cap."
I appreciate they might have. There might have been something like that, but I appreciate that they didn't show that. They didn't show that, here's Thor trying to run down the street with two hammers and he's exhausted. No, he was just as bad of a badass as Cap was and as Iron Man was, and still had the weight. I appreciate that.
I think they could have probably, if they would have kept the fat Thor, but then just you call it mean spirited. If they would have actually just kind of just pulled it out and just like, this is what he is. Like you had Robert Downey Jr. be in space for 22 days in the movie. When he was sitting on the cot, he looked emaciated. Like somebody who hasn't eaten.
Right.
You don't have to have him somehow be thin. I just don't know if you have to sit there and, you know, nobody was looking at Tony Stark making jokes going, sheesh, Tony, why don't you cover up and close that robe and eat a burger? You're like Ethiopian thin or something else like that. You're like peg legs over there. You just kind of just move on and know that it is. The people get it. They'll look at them and laugh on their own, not necessarily, once again, you with a hammer talking about everything. It was a bit much.
So parts of Fat Thor were not appreciable, and parts of it were for me. So I'm
Um,
kind of total thumbs down on Fat Thor.
okay. There's also the Hulk. What do we think
Better
of
Hulk.
Professor Hulk?
I'll tell you the truth. The first time we saw the movie, I thought this CG looks terrible. But then when we saw it again, I started looking at like the facial. We sat a little closer. Maybe my eyes were look a little bit sharper when we sat closer. But I thought to appreciate like all of the subtleties and the facial mocap, and it worked better for me because of that the second time. Character wise, I thought he was okay. In fact, he character wise he improved for me on the second viewing also. The first time I just thought it was weird. It was just weird to get used to like Banner's voice coming out of Hulk's mouth. And then Hulk speaking like a normal person because it's usually like Hulk smash. But he kind of grew on me. I honestly, in the end, I ended up appreciating that characterization.
I find that while I like Mark Ruffalo and I'm okay with Professor Hulk, I still feel like you have one of the strongest characters in the MCU, and now that you have Captain Marvel allegedly taking that role, they just completely just neutered the Hulk in general. He is a shell of what he can be. He is a Superman, Thor-like level power that's now sort of like vegetarian, and I can understand why because Hulk is a if it's kind of like having a Superman with you. If you have Superman, then the battle's not as difficult because he's going to mop the floor with like everybody there.
Right.
And so they don't want that because that would take away from the other people in their battle and their struggle to try to overcome and step up their game. But it's a disservice, I think, just general to the Hulk character. Not that it's a problem with him. I didn't have a problem with him, Mark Ruffalo, being the voice of the Hulk, or the Hulk having a different look or being intelligent. It's just I wish they would have sit there and been like, "Can we have the Hulk smash, and not be on this Gandhi-like role?" I'd rather you just have shipped him off to another planet. Then, to be quite
Well,
honest with you,
I honestly wouldn't.
if you're going to have a Hulk character, it's like having Superman and not have Superman fly. It's just what okay, why are we not doing this, and why are we not writing here? Because we're not focusing on the Hulk. His movie was a failure, so we're just going to focus on the big three that made us like a lot of money. Okay, that's fine. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. I wasn't a
Okay.
fan when he was in the Hulkbuster suit either. You have a Hulk that doesn't want to come out, and now all of a sudden you have him in one movie where he's in a suit, he doesn't want to fight, and then we have him in another movie where actually he's now back to being the Hulk without the Hulkbuster suit, and he's still not fighting. Where's my Hulk and where's his fighting? That's what I miss.
There were two scenes, in fact, three scenes that stood out to me with Hulk in them, though. And I hear what you're saying about him being depowered, but there was an attempt to explain at least why he was depowered with the whole taking on the Infinity Gauntlet and using it to unsnap everybody. He, that took a toll on him. It took a toll on Thanos when Thanos did it too. But Hulk being the only person physically strong enough to withstand that and then being weakened after that. And so, like when the people were buried under the rubble of the Avengers facility, and Hulk's only using the one hand to lift up the rocks to unpin Rocket and whatnot, you know that he can do that because his left or his right arm had been weakened by the Infinity Snap. So I
He's strong
appreciate
enough to do that with one hand. I need him to be fighting, Bill. That's what I
I
need
hear
him to
you.
be doing.
Um,
I have nothing. I have no worries or no problems with him and his altruistic giving up and putting himself in harm's way to undo something at great cost. It's very heroic. It's not a problem with his character or the personality. It's just not having Superman fly. Okay, I can understand that Superman is doing stuff behind the scenes and may sit there and walk into the fiery sun and drop off the stones for everybody to survive. I get all of that. But if you're not going to tell me that Superman is not going to use his eye beams, he's not going to use his super speed, and is not going to fly, then I'm like, it's. I picked up the Hulk comic book because Hulk is smashing. I didn't pick up the Hulk comic book because he's sitting around going like, "Hey, try these tacos."
wow.
I
So
you
the
know.
other scene that stood out for me was obviously the scene with the Ancient One, Tilda Swinton, and that scene where they explain exactly how the time travel and the removing of a stone from the timeline and stuff works. That was a cool scene. And
That
then
was
the
a
other
cool
scene,
scene with Tilda Swinton. But if you're going about to go time travel, once again, what's the rule about time travel? You don't explain time travel, Bill. That's the rule. You avoid explaining time travel.
why is that the rule?
Because they don't know what about time travel. Nobody knows. They just make up gobbledygook stuff. That when you start tearing apart, I had superfan Carlos call me on the phone, and he's just like, "Well, this part doesn't make sense. If you're actually going to be doing, you can start tearing it apart. You can drive yourself crazy with coming up with inconsistencies of something that might not fit within the parameters set up. So it's always weird in getting into time travel
I
stuff.
won't say that the time travel and the explanation of it was 100% on lock for me. There are some wonky things about it, but like you said, if you think too much about it, the science of the thing starts to fall apart. If you think about Star Wars, though, if you think about the sounds of the X-Wings and stuff in space, when we all know that there's a vacuum in space, there is no sound, it falls apart. It's
Yeah, that
yeah,
doesn't bother me though. They don't
right.
try to explain that. Nobody sits there and says that. That's like your own personal knowledge, but that doesn't bother me in a movie.
Right.
I only go there because they sit there and they start talking about it, and they want to give you some of the rules behind it. Star
I
Wars
think
doesn't give you those rules. It's only when you set yourself up for the rules that they start to apply. You
Yeah, I
know.
think they make an attempt to try to give some kind of logical explanation for it. Like I said, it's not 100% unlocked. There are certain parts of it that I'm still confused about.
So
And it's a slippery slope when you introduce time travel into a movie because, it's a slippery slope.
so
But
let me ask. Go ahead. Go ahead.
but the other thing I just want to finish out my Hulk scenes was the
Sure.
one when he goes back to the Battle of New York and they use him to sort of like you can't interfere with what happened in the past, so you have to stay away from yourself. But he's still acting like the Hulk, so he was like, throwing things and trying to be Hulk like he was like, "R, smash, ah." That was funny.
I laughed
Okay.
too. It was funny. I would have
Uh,
preferred the Hulk smash, but yes, that scene
right.
was funny.
That was funny.
Uh,
So
so speaking of the time travel, it was I didn't have a problem with it. I think we were talked about the movie a couple days in a row. You mentioned some things. For me, I didn't really, um, and I still don't to a degree, think about it as much. I don't think about it really at all, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't really expect them to have this shit on lock. I've seen this before when they do Flash and they talk about Speed Force, or in other TV shows where they start talking about time travel. It's just one of those things. I just wish they would not even try to explain it. Just give some sort of simple thing and be like, you know what, this stone we can turn back time. Call it a day. You know, when you start talking about these timelines and offshoots, you start opening up my mind and thinking, well, if you did that, then how come that didn't happen? It starts to get a little bit like, yeah, I don't want to have to think about it because then I'm gonna be like, this shit's starting to fall apart. And right now with Avengers Endgame, I wasn't, like they said, you give me the light rules, I'll go with it. If you violate those rules, then I'll probably end up being like, well, that's a problem. But generally speaking, if you say this, I'm fine with it. If you say the time stone can do this, I'm cool with it. I'm not going to question it. But my question for you though is when Captain Rogers, Captain America goes back to drop off the stones.
Which
So
we
he
don't
goes
see. It happens off screen.
off screen, but he goes back to the 40s to be with Peggy.
Right.
My understanding is like it changes the whole timeline where Peggy actually got married and had kids with somebody else.
That's our timeline.
So he just wipes that all out.
No, it exists, but his timeline is one of those black offshoots that the new timeline where he goes back to see Peggy and he stays.
But I thought
That's
you don't have the offshoots because he's supposed to put back the time stones, otherwise you corrupt the present.
he obviously must have done something in order. Maybe he took the time stone. I think that I think what happens is it still exists. We just don't ever see it. We don't see the timeline. We've already seen it in which Steve goes back to the past, or gets frozen in the ice and stays there for 70 years and wakes up when Nick Fury releases him from the ice. That's the story we know. The story we don't know is the offshoot that's created when Steve goes back and either doesn't replace the time stone exactly where it was, maybe he places it back later or at a different time. I mean, I'm thinking that.
But then how does he show up in the present then to give the shield then?
We don't know that. Maybe he went back and got the stone and fucked around with time again in order to come back to the present.
Do you see how confusing the shit is?
I do see how confusing it is.
And what did he do? What did he do in that other timeline with Peggy? While he's banging Peggy, was the Nazis coming? Did he?
Right.
Did he do anything with them, or did he?
Did 9/11 happen? Was he there?
Right. Did he just sit around and just be like, I got my chick. I'm not going to do anything for the next 50 years except give this shield to Sam. Later on.
These are questions we would have to ask the Russos.
Which I don't think. I think this is. See, I don't need to go. I don't want to go there. I don't think the movie, for me, like if I start to piece everything apart, it's designed for me to be like, well, this is. I don't think this is like Interstellar, where they're trying to do Stephen Hawking and make sure they get all the variables and get astrophysicists on board. They're making an enjoyable movie and sending the characters off. But these are some of the things that did pop up afterwards.
Maybe in that timeline, Steve does something with one of the stones to eliminate the Nazis, and they never have a World War II, and they're just living their lives peacefully, like some kind of like Ozzie and Harriet TV show.
Ooh, can he can he get rid of the Nazis as well as some sort of like racial hatred too?
Right, maybe he does. Maybe I mean we don't know any of that because that's going to be a Disney Plus show in 10 years. But I'm just saying, I think in order to give you that happy ending with Steve being with Peggy, which was like the main romantic thrust of like the entire thing from Captain America 1, they have to do a little bit of cheating, and you draw your own conclusions, but it does certainly possibility.
Cap's going to have to get a job. He's going to have to get a job in the regular world if that's whatever he was doing. He's going to have to pay the bills.
Right. He's got to pay the bills. He's got to lay the pipe. He's got to do all the things that he never did in his original timeline.
Peggy's going to be coming home after working with Howard Stark and going, so you haven't been doing anything all day. You just left the dishes. You didn't even pull the chicken out of the fridge. Nothing. Just nothing.
Right.
He was
But
like, "No, I was rescuing. I was helping some lady down the street get her cat out of the tree." She's just like, "Uh-huh. So who's going to mow the lawn? You're just not going to mow the lawn either, huh?"
right. So is he not? Does he never receive the soldier serum in the new Peggy timeline? Does I mean these are all questions that are legitimate questions to ask, but in service of the plot in which you get the payoff of Steve being with Peggy, I think they just expect you just to take that with a grain of salt.
So when Cap gives the shield over to Sam, I couldn't hear what he said, and when Sam goes, he has the shield in his hand. He goes, "I feel like this doesn't belong
Belong.
to me."
Yes.
Cap said, "It shouldn't."
Or
He
doesn't.
what
Something like
it
that.
yes,
He didn't say it doesn't belong to you. Bucky's or Sam said something like, I feel like this isn't mine or something.
my
And he's
shield.
like, it is. It is, he said. Something like that.
Yeah, like it's not like it was his to give. Like it shouldn't be. It's something like it's like all of ours or something like that. I don't know. It was a different word than I heard. I felt that the transition. Um, Obviously, I don't have a problem if the fact that they give it to the Shield to Captain America. You know, you can always make the argument there's a basis for it in the comic books, that there's stories on that, and so that makes everything, you know. But there's also a basis for having a female Thor. I just don't know if everybody fully accepts that, but that's cool. They could have given it to Bucky, and it would have made sense to me as well. My question is that scene was just very clunky, and I watched it the second time, and I could see that Bucky had a sense on his face when Cap was going back into the past that he might not be returning. I took it like when he kind of gave that look like he was not coming back, like he kind of knew that. But what was confusing me, the way the Russos set it up, is when Steve arrives, when Bucky kind of gives the go ahead for Sam to walk over, and as opposed to them not. I know I talked about with you, it's a bit of a nitpick. I just feel like it could film Billy better because they're both good friends of Captain America, and if anything, why wouldn't they both walk over? It would result in an awkward conversation with me giving the shield to one of her and the other person feeling a little bit neglected. But he just happens to just stand on the sidelines because he maybe has a sixth sense that, oh, I'm not getting the shield because I don't know. It's a little bit clunky. It's a little bit clunky and it's a little bit
I don't
weird.
feel like it was clunky. I felt like I could have been happy if they would have given it to Bucky or to Sam. Either way, we know the real reason why they gave it to Sam, and I'm okay with that for once.
What? Because it's based on the comic book?
No, because it's based on inclusion, and that's fine in this case. Which was, I mean, maybe it was based on the comic book for inclusion as well, but they have certainly made a bigger deal out of it being inclusion, being a priority in the cinematic universe than I remember it being in the comic universe. But I'm not really steeped in the comic universe that much, so. But I'm okay with that. I mean, the in-universe explanation also works for me because, let's face it, Bucky is like one code word away from like going all Manchurian candidate again. So, sure he fixed him and whatnot, but you don't know if there's shit still broke up in there. So you'd be like,
candidate.
Cupcake, and he turns out and starts slaughtering people with the shield. No, that's not going to work.
Oh, I appreciate the Manchurian Candidate reference. I used the
Right.
Whopper reference with Superfan Carlos the other day from War Games. He caught it fairly quickly.
He's clever like that, Carlos.
Yeah, so,
Um,
but yeah, either way. But you're also the man that didn't have a problem with after Han Solo died and Princess Leia walking right past Chewbacca like he's nothing for some person she just met, presumably that, she didn't know.
Maybe we'll find out that their relationship is more significant than we thought in episode.
Well, if it ends up being more significant than that, I would understand that at that point. But at the time we see the movie, it's kind of like that's his best friend, and she just walks past him, like
Well, she doesn't want to get her.
Chewie's been with him for decades, and by the way, when he stopped seeing her, who was he with? He was hanging out with Chewie. I mean, it's not like he's just some sort of like ancillary character in his life.
Princess Leia is like me. Like her husband loved dogs, but she just really tolerated them, and she doesn't want to get fur on her costume. I understand that.
Oh, you're so disrespectful to Chewie. That's just so disrespectful. Either way, J.J. Abrams supported my position on that one. Going, it was filmed poorly. I don't think there's another. I don't know how you could do it, but that's not my job to figure out. it still seems weird. I know they're trying to pass on the torch. They're trying to pass it on to Sam. I think they could have did it in a different way, where I would be looking at this going, how does Bucky know to send over one guy? Why would they not walk over there? Except for the obvious reasons. You don't want to give him the shield in front of him. You know.
Well,
Uh,
right, and they were having a moment, and
yes.
I'm personally thrilled that Sam gets it. Like I said, that's my favorite scene in the movie, and I
So
can't.
society is very divisive right now. There's a lot of things. The trolls go on Yahoo. Not everybody's happy with Black Captain America coming up here. How do you feel about it? Do you think there will be some sort of issue with this? Because essentially, what you do, we're in the world, and Disney's been quite upfront that they want to be more inclusive and they want to expand the characters. They want to bring in more LGBTQ characters, whatever you want to have it, more gays. They wanted to make it a little bit more representative of the whole society, if you will. And so the fact is that you have this. Do you think there's some sort of backlash with, as a
I do not.
possibility?
I think it was smart of them. Why have Black Panther be the only example of a leading black superhero on your canvas when you've got another one that's sort of already taken over the
Well,
mantle of Captain America?
the issue is that there's not a problem with having a character. Black Panther is a character in the book. It's kind of like taking, well, even though there's a basis for it, it's almost having like a black Superman, if you will. You had Captain America, now he's gone. We're going to make him now a black Captain America. You
I
know,
think the fact that they've already done it in the comic books is going to smooth over some possible ruffled
as
feathers.
opposed to them just making something up.
Yes. I
Is
think
that the way it has to work? There has to be some sort of basis in print in order for it to go.
I think having it being adapted rather than being a whole from cloth uh, new thing is going to allow people to accept it easier. I don't think that we're in 2019. Black Panther made $1 billion. I think the world is ready for another black main lead superhero. Yeah, I think they are. And I think that Sam can be a great Captain America. And I think Anthony Mackie can lead a movie. I think the same question was present as to whether Chris Evans could lead a movie before he became Captain America, and that worked out fine. I think anyone who questions our Lord and Savior Kevin Feige is in for a bad awakening.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Anthony Mackie can't place a lead, but let's face it, they've all been in movies where outside of being once again like in Star Wars or within some sort of Marvel universe, their shit is not on lock. Like everybody looks at them as being A-lister. Gone is that time. But certainly, it's almost kind of like saying if you have Nicole Kidman, her last three movies have made like 10 cents. She gets an Aquaman, and the movie makes $1 billion. Okay, so it, after she does something else, it doesn't mean that we're all going to go out and see Nicole Kidman in the movie. It's not that. It's the material.
The bigger
So
question for me is now that we've seen Captain America pass the mantle on to Sam Wilson, to Falcon, how does this play into what we've already been known as announced as the Disney Plus TV show, Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Is Falcon going to become Captain America in that show, and therefore they'll change the name to Captain America and Falcon? I mean, and Winter Soldier, or is that show going to be somewhat, of an in-between quel before, I guess it can't be before Infinity War because they didn't wake him up from Bucky from the ice until then. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of question marks as to like how they're going to actually proceed.
the only
It's the
question
same
mark is
thing.
need to give him some super soldier serum or have him hit the weights. I mean that. I mean, you can't be Thor and walk over. Thor can't give you the hammer if you can't lift the hammer. Okay, so
Right.
you can have the shield, but all you got to do is get one punch or whatever else, and then you're like down for the count. I mean,
Also,
that's
one character they didn't even bother to try to bring back was Vision, but yet we know there's a show set in the 50s, according to Elizabeth Olsen, with Wanda and the Vision, WandaVision. How is that going to work?
yeah.
Now that they've
Uh,
introduced time travel, I think it's, the gloves are off. They got to be careful, though.
yeah, I hope so. I'm hoping for this whole new phase what we're getting into is we're getting into different characters, and at a certain point, I consider this to be a jumping off point now that they concluded the chapter.
Right.
It's it's now going on to I would call it like part two,
Yeah.
and all
Volume 2.
Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman have gone home, and so now we're dealing with Firestorm, Samurai, and the Nunchuk, and so is everybody going to be on board? These characters aren't A-list characters by any stretch of the imagination. You know, Falcon's a cool character, but Falcon's never been like a lead where everybody's sitting there going, "Oh, I got to get the latest issue of Falcon." Same as Winter Soldier, same as Bucky. These characters aren't A-listers, and and I understand what you would say to me that Iron Man wasn't an A-lister either, but he's not as low on the level as they are.
Wow.
You know,
Well, that's
they're a
why you
little.
don't make a Falcon movie. You make Falcon Captain America and make a Captain America movie.
That would be bold, Bill.
I agree, but we
That
are
would be bold.
Black Panther spoke to the people, and people turned out for it. I don't think it's as big of a step as it would have been before Black Panther, for sure.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, in about 13 minutes, I have to go
Okay.
because I got plans. I got plans, Bill. I got
Gonna go
plans.
pray for your soul, are you?
Yeah, I'm gonna pray for your
Okay.
soul. To be quite honest with you, you're the one that's going to hell. According to the literature. According to the literature, Bill.
Mhm. Do you want to get
I
into
don't know.
box office then, or did you want to?
While I'm at St. Peter's Gate, I'm going to try to do my best to get you in. I know your mother's there, and I'm going to be sitting there going like, listen, I talked with the people. They're just not really sure. I mean, he is gay as they come. He won't
Wow,
renounce
really?
that.
Wow.
Bill, the movie,
You're living in
I know
sin
we
over
were going towards the end of questioning some of the things. It does have one of the greatest battle scenes I've seen in terms of comic books, but it's really the fight. And I think Thanos represents the penultimate, actually, supervillain for me. And I have to think on it right now, but I think the Russos did a great job. It's a different type of film. Their success is deserved. Success is
I
deserved.
agree, and I am very happy for once.
Especially coming off of watching Shazam.
Right. And as we get ready to step into box office results and we discuss, how much money this movie actually made this weekend, for me, it's exciting, again, when something that I feel like deserves the kind of accolades it's been getting gets the money that it deserves as well. So I'm quite happy for them.
And let's be quite honest with you. If you were to go with performances, unlike Infinity War, these performances, I think, allow the actors to kind of stretch their muscles a little bit more than usual, based on the dramatics of some of these interactions. But all right, well, let's just move on.
So your grade is B minus A minus. So we're just
my grade is a B.
Yeah, we're one letter grade apart.
Yeah, it's the thing about it is my grade is also reflective of the fact is that you disagree with me at this point. I think you said with me is I think in terms of replay value, I can see myself popping in Infinity War a lot more often than I would Endgame.
Right.
And it's not because Endgame is not good. It's just that Endgame is a lot more talking.
Right.
And characters and connecting and explaining each other's feelings and where we're at and how we're going to do this. And on a Friday night after a long week of work, I get it. That's why I still haven't watched Schindler's List. It requires more emotional pull. Infinity War doesn't require
you break
much.
Schindler's List up into parts and you just make it like a half-hour sitcom for 4 nights in a row? Therefore, it won't feel so heavy to you.
You know what, Bill? That's a solution. I might take you up on that, but unfortunately, now I'm on Crackle, so I'm doing everything else fine. I'm watching crap that I know is crap, but I'm just like, I need something while I fix breakfast. That's all it is. I'm watching just crap on crap instead of going, why don't you just put on Schindler's List or something else? Because it just takes too much. Too much, Bill.
I've seen Schindler's List, and it's 25 years old, Jay. It's getting to get to the point where it's going to phase out of the movies that you watch because it's too old.
Oh, okay.
So
So
I
you're
suggest you get on it.
okay. All right. For the weekend of April 26th and 28th of 2019, I don't know. I mean, obviously, the
Gee,
number one movie
what's
in its
number
opening
one
week is the Avengers Endgame, which pulled in $350 million. Such a
in
nice
3 days?
round.
I
Yeah.
mean, these people can do no wrong.
I really like to know what the budget is. For the next show, we need to find out what the budget is.
Okay.
Clearly, obviously, they made 5 times over their money, but either way, I still like to know the budget. But 1.2 billion right now. This is the directors, the Kevin Feige, the rest of the brass. They're just going wunderbar. I
Right.
mean,
I mean,
I mean,
they've made as much money in one weekend as
as it
many.
took like what 6 weeks for Aquaman or 4 or 5? I don't know.
Right.
What?
Right. Longer than this. Let's put it that way.
let's see.
Uh, so
Let's see if it's. Well, I don't have it. We'll look at it later. We'll
the
come up with
question
it.
is, will it break? Will it have legs? Will it continue to break records moving forward from its opening weekend? Will it get up to 3 billion? Will it be the first $3 billion movie?
Um,
I mean, it's made 1.2 or
well,
5.
yeah, I think this is, in all honesty, I think this is the height of it. I think this is the apex where everybody was trying to see it this weekend. So,
Right.
I hear what you're saying. I think it should probably, well, in all, what if Infinity War made 1.5?
Right.
It appears to me that this should get up to 2, 1.7, or something else fairly easily. I
I
don't
think
think
it's
it.
going higher than that.
You think so?
Maybe 2.5, which it'll still make it the highest grossing movie of all time because I think Titanic and Avatar was like 2.1 or 2.2.
I'm going to go with 2.25.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll
I
see who's
think.
closer on The Price is Right.
What are you going with?
I'm going to say minimum 2.5.
Okay, the second movie is Captain Marvel. Its worldwide total is 1.1 million, 1.1 billion dollars. By the way, that's over 8 weeks.
Right. Not 3 days.
No,
Right.
8 weeks. Captain Marvel, very respectable, 1.1 billion dollars.
Right.
8 weeks. So,
What did it make this weekend?
it made $8 million.
Wow.
I don't know who the hell went and saw Captain Marvel for $8 million. I'm gonna
A
assume
lot
that
of
was.
people wanted to see it because of Infinity or because of Endgame, because it was the last one before Endgame.
Okay. In its second week, the number 3 movie, The Curse of La Llorona, whatever else, pulled in
Which
another
I
seven.
just realized was in the Conjuring universe. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was. I thought it would do like shit money, but it's worldwide. It's got $86 million on a budget of $9 million right now. So,
Yeah, that's not too bad.
what's that?
That's not too bad.
No, it's great in terms of your investment. The movie still looks like crap, but um, whatever. It's a horror movie. Breakthrough, the religious movie, in its second week of release, pulled in. I'm sorry, I clicked off the
That's the
screen.
one with the lady from This Is Us.
I believe Topher Grace, Chrissy Metz. I guess so. It pulled in $6 million, bringing its grand total over 2 weeks to $33 million. Religious movies seem to be doing quite well, oddly enough, for having like low budgets. They do enough business to keep a studio interested in doing it. Low risk, high reward. The number 5 movie in its fourth week is Shazam at $5 million. It's got $346 million worldwide. Bill, are you still there?
I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay, no, it's all right. It's got $131 million domestically over 4 weeks. Shazam. So
I guess there'll be a Shazam too.
yeah, well, it's made 3 times its production budget. It cost $100 million to make. It's up to $314 million, so it's good for them. And there you have it. Right now, Buena Vista, The Mouse House, Disney, The King of All has 2 movies, and the top two, number one and number two, at the end of April, for a grand total of at least $2.3 billion.
And it's only April, and they have Aladdin coming out within a month. And then they've got The Lion King still to come, Toy Story 4 still to come, Frozen still to come, and Star Wars still to come. Fuck everybody else. It's Disney's game. And don't forget, they've also got Disney Plus coming out this year. What a year for Disney.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lot. That's good for them. I still want to know what everybody gets paid. What you said. What did Natalie Portman get paid for her 2 minutes of appearance?
I found out that it was a cutscene from Thor: The Dark World, which I kind of thought it was, but I wasn't sure. So Natalie Portman got squat because she already did that. They
Okay.
just lifted her from, but they had Rene Russo back for sure. They
Well,
had
sure. Some of
Robert
those things
Redford.
that Tilda Swinton, sure, and they Robert Redford.
I mean,
I
what do
like.
you think Robert Redford gets paid for that 5-minute scene? What do you think he got paid for that?
You always like to give the people like $10 million as if they're doing a whole movie for 5 minutes, but that's just
No,
ridiculous.
but
I
it's
mean,
Robert Redford. I'm sure he got paid a lot. Whatever it was. Did you know what I just heard too? This week, Chris Evans made. Can you guess how much for Captain America: The First Avenger Chris Evans made versus what he made for this?
yeah,
movie?
he made like what, $750 million.
No, what he was paid for the first Avenger, the first Captain America movie.
Yeah, I said $1 million.
No, not even close.
What?
300,000.
Okay.
He got paid 15 million for Infinity War and Endgame.
Well, it's about time though. But he
$300,000.
he had to build up to that.
Yeah, but I mean, damn, $300,000.
You're acting like somehow at the time, once again, that somehow Chris Evans doing something was like he was some huge star at that point in time, and they were shortchanging him, which was not the case.
I'm just saying.
Okay, it's like having somehow sit there and go, Will Smith currently got $300,000 to do the movie. Chris Evans was not ever like some sort of A-list. He was bringing in the big bucks. Don't equate his good looks with what he should have been getting paid.
I'm just saying. I'm really kind of surprised at that low amount. I mean, I would have thought at least $1 million. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a major studio motion picture. I mean, this just goes to show you like how thrifty, or what's the word I want to use, Ike Perlmutter, who in the time was in charge of Marvel Studios, was.
Right.
Just saying.
Do you think Tom Cruise would have did that movie for $300,000?
No, I don't think anybody would have done that movie for $300,000. But
yeah, it's not like Chris Evans was sitting there going like, I'm blowing up on all this other shit. I'm doing this movie called The Sun and the Moon and the Stars. I'm doing that in some independent film festivals.
Wow.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I'll take it happily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't
think Tyrese, if they came to Tyrese and offered him $300 to play Green Lantern, you don't think he would do it? He'd do it in a heartbeat.
Sure. I mean, $300,000 for normal people is no, drop in the bucket.
And then you renegotiate. Once you get the hit, then you renegotiate. You
Right.
keep it going. I mean, it worked out for him at the end.
Yeah. Now he can probably parlay that into some bigger salary somewhere else. Might not be worth it in the end, but
yeah, he's going to go downhill from here, Bill. I'm sorry to tell you.
Well, I wouldn't count out the fact that just because Cap's 111 years old at the end of Endgame, that he won't make some kind of cameo at some point down the line.
Okay. Well, that'll be good because this next movie he does, what's going to be called like The Gifted or something else, where he's going to be helping some little girl out who lost her dog. That's going to make like 10 cents at the box office. So
right. Hope he invests his Captain America. I mean, that's how it is, right? Do you think they said to him, "We want to move on," or do you think he said, "I want to move on"? Because he had to sign a 9-picture deal. He fulfilled the contract. 9 pictures is a lot. I mean, he extended it beyond the 6 in the first place. Do you
I
think
don't
they
know.
said-
Actually,
what do you think they said?
I don't know. That's actually a very good question. He's done
Yeah.
so many movies. Was Hugh Jackman done with Wolverine?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think maybe after enough time, and I figured if you made enough money where you feel like, hey, that's good. Um,
$15
I
million
don't know.
though is still not comparable to Robert Downey Jr., who got something like 40 for being in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yeah, well, I think that's with Robert Downey Jr. But I got but see the thing about it is I always have the feeling like Robert Downey, if you wanted him, he could do. I mean, now he's dead, but he was always seemed to be game for it.
If they
Spider-Man
rolled up the
Homecoming.
fucking Brinks trucks to your house and poured out fucking stacks and stacks and stacks of money, wouldn't you be game for it too? I'd be like, right, put Tony's head in the toilet and let me breathe fresh turd water. That's what you can do for me for that kind of
Okay,
money.
okay, I can't with you. I gotta roll.
All right, that's fine. I'm just saying. All right,
Oh, Bill, this was very enjoyable, and
absolutely.
I think I probably went too long on my Game of Thrones segment, but whatever. Um, all right. What are you doing tonight?
We're watching Gotham. We're gonna try to maybe get through the finale, but I doubt we'll make it that far. We've got 3 episodes. We're not binge
Okay.
watchers, so maybe 2.
Okay. Well, I got Chipotle tonight, and I'm with the Game of Thrones. Um,
9 o'clock.
we'll see. I'm hoping I won't be disappointed. I go in with always some sort of trepidation with Game of Thrones.
I know. And you look at it with a
Um,
side eye.
yeah, because part of it now is it's like it's um quickly with another one of my minutes, even though we're got to be going here. It's that it's now like The Walking Dead. The show should be focused on the material and the story, but now it's about deaths. It's who's going to die.
Right.
And that's the way The Walking Dead was marketed. Like who's going to die? Turn into our next episode. Which one will it be?
Well, you only
And
have 3 more after this week, right? Game of
yeah.
Thrones.
So and that Game of Thrones has been doing that. They have not been pushing that narrative. I know the fans are, but I'm hoping that it makes sense. That there's some sort of surprises, and I'm hoping for um, something that's just not predictable. I think predictable is the worst thing possible. But anyway,
Right.
Bill,
Yeah.
I will see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
I've been your co-host, Payne.
I'm Bill.
Peace.
Bye.